Hey everyone, I'm Steph. Welcome to I Today Apero number 4. I wish people would be, 4, but they are all on mute. By the way, we have...
Yeah, 4.
4. We have an amazing audience today. Woohoo! This is great. So, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We have an amazing talk today from Orozco. You will see it's super, super interesting. You will love it, I'm sure. We're going to talk about getting remote, but also getting asynchronous. So it's kind of next level remote. You will see it's super cool. This is I Today Apero. We are live from Lausanne City in Switzerland. It's super sunny today. And I'm so happy to see you guys. Thank you so much for joining. So if you don't know what an apero is, it's kind of a tradition in Switzerland and France as well. It's like, when you drink some wine with friends and you sit, you relax, you have a good time together, you chat, maybe you eat chips or cheese or whatever you like, and it's kind of a chill out time, and we really want to make to have that, that feeling of being together. I don't know if you know the tradition of I Today Apero, but we have one. I have a bottle of wine in here. It's not any wine, it's the wine from my family, because my family are winemakers. Today for Ed, I chose Expressis, which is a very, very great wine with a lot of taste, quite strong, and it's a red, by the way. And so I don't have only one bottle. That one is for me. I'm gonna open it in front of you guys. But I have 2 more. So one's gonna go to Ed, as our speaker of today, and the second one is gonna be. I see already the chat. Send us a bottle. So the second one, the third one, sorry, Ed will choose whom to send to. So if you guys are interacting well, if you are asking great questions, or if you are engaged, maybe you're gonna be the lucky one receiving the bottle. We are crazy. We are ready to send it anywhere in the world. Not too far, Ed, because otherwise it costs a lot of money. But we are ready, and yeah, we really want to share the good time with you guys. I Today Apero, it's also our way to showcase the amazing community that we have created with I Today. We have, basically anyone in that community could be speakers. And today it's not anyone, it's Ed, and he has a great talk. But really, if you feel like you would like to be our next speaker, feel free to write us, and we're gonna make some room for you in the next month. Usually I Today Apero is once a month. Today, I'm super excited to welcome Mr. Ed Orozco, live from Geneva. I can't say Geneva, Switzerland, actually, because you are located in France, but next to Geneva. So Ed is a product design consultant. You're born in Colombia, born and raised in Colombia. You left Colombia in 2010, right? If I'm right?
Correct, yeah.
And you define yourself as a digital nomad, so you will tell us everything about this, and yeah, so you have been working for very big companies like Wonder Studio, that is a digital agency. You have been working for big clients like IBM, WWF, or Adobe, including working on the remote, on being remote together. And yeah, you have quite some secrets about being remote, because you were already remote. You started being remote 6 years ago, if I'm right, before the pandemic. Yeah. So you have 1 trick or 2 to share with us. So please, everyone, make some noise for Mr. Ed Orozco. Woo!
Thank you for the introduction, Steph, and for the bottle. And thank you, everyone, for joining. It's pretty cool to see so many people here. So yeah, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit, and maybe now is a good time to start sharing my screen here. All right. So yeah, so I'm a UX consultant. I was born and raised in Colombia, but I've been working in digital products in different countries for over 10 years. I call this period of my life slow-madding, because I was living as a digital nomad in different countries for longer stretches of time, sometimes more than 1 or 2 years. And during this period of time, or particularly in 2014, I started working remotely. not full time, but a combination of in person or like in an office and remote. And boy, it was really weird at the beginning. It was a little funny to sort of like try to replicate the same dynamics that you have in an office when you're not in an office. And so it was sort of like a gradual process for me and the people that I work with to learn how to use technology to make it more flexible for us to work in different parts of the world. Now I'm not a digital nomad anymore. I'm a recovered digital nomad. Since last year, I settled down. I'm not traveling anymore. Not because of COVID. That was just a coincidence. I had been planning to settle down for a while, and then COVID happened, and then just the timing just
the nightmare.
The timing was right. Today I'm gonna be talking about the things that I learned and working remotely, leading teams remotely, but not only remotely, but also asynchronously. I think that would be the word. And I'm gonna explain what all of that is about. During the talk, guys, I'm going to make short pauses. Feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. If you want me to go deeper into any particular topic, feel free to do it. This is, like Steph mentioned, this is a conversation. And cool. Definitely we can make the most out of it by just exchanging our ideas as we go. So, future-ready asynchronous teams. I'm going to start by saying we are a very distracted society. Not only when we're working, but also in our personal lives. A lot of people just cannot live without their phones. They carry their phones everywhere, and they get constantly bombarded with notifications and push notifications and email and WhatsApp and text messages and things that really are not that transcendental in our lives, but they do take away our focus from whatever we're doing in the physical space. So whether we're talking to our spouse, to our friends, to our mother, whether we're trying to figure something out in the workplace, or we're trying to solve a problem, those notifications keep coming. And since last year, when we were all forced to jump into remote without many of us without a lot of experience in the remote realm, we had to sort of like adapt and quickly kind of like change the way we work. And sort of like what the initial response that I saw in a lot of people in a lot of companies is, okay, let's just keep doing what we were doing before, but with digital tools. So like if before I would just walk down the hall, tap on your shoulder and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I need to talk to you about something. Now it's, I send you a message. Hey, do you have 5 minutes? Let's jump on a Zoom call. The problem with that is that we get distracted all the time, constantly. I found this very comical. This is an excerpt from a book that Steph has never read in his life. I know this
book. It's behind me.
Is The Sprint is one of those books that if you're in tech, or actually, honestly, anyone should read it. I think it's good for everyone who just works with other people. But the reason I pulled this from The Sprint is at the beginning of one of the chapters, they have this very funny drawing or representation of what the modern working day looks like. You have meeting, a little bit of email, a little bit of work, meeting, you eat something, meeting, and maybe if you're lucky, you can actually do a little more work before you go home. And this hasn't changed since we started working remotely. The problem with that is that it doesn't leave us space to do actual deep work. Deep work is what Cole Newport calls the ability to actually focus for longer stretches of time and to do something that's intellectually demanding. Cole Newport is not the first one to talk about this. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of psychological research, but also some of you may remember this guy, Mihail something, that came up with the concept of flow. I'll never be able to pronounce his last name.
Csikszentmihalyi.
Thank you. Thank you. I need to memorize it. Luckily it's recorded so we can learn the pronunciation.
This is really good.
But yeah, he came up with the concept of flow, which is when we are doing work that is challenging enough to keep us engaged And we get to sort of like this mental state in which we lose track of time because we're so not excited, but hello. You wanna try to pronounce Mihail's last name? No. Okay. So yeah, the thing is that
I'm in short of alcohol. I'm sad. I might make some tea though.
Yeah, go. Tea is good for the throat. So we don't really get to focus into deep work or flow state because of the distractions. As soon as you start working in an intellectually demanding task, you get distracted, you get a notification, you get a phone call, you have to jump on a meeting. And most of these meetings are really not planned. They're like all over the place. Everyone talks over each other. It's a mess. One of the cool things of not being distracted at work is that people actually feel happier. People feel more motivated and more engaged. And I'm not sure, I don't know if everyone here is in the tech industry, but the tech industry is notorious for being unable to keep their employees for a long time. So it has huge churn. Employees, even at Google, the average time of an employee staying at Google is less than 2 years. Wow. So that's a bad thing compared to like our parents that used to stay 20 and 30 years working for the same company. So that is a lot tied to how engaged they feel with the work that they do. And that is very, very intricately related to the amount of quality work that you can put out or creative output. So, any questions so far? We're good? Everyone
Sounds
understood
good.
the problem?
Yeah.
Great. So, enter asynchronous communication. Asynchronous communication, or async for friends, very short, is the opposite of NSYNC communication. So if you guys remember the boy band from the 90s, their name is NSYNC because they were supposed to be singing and dancing in sync.
What? Didn't know that.
Fun fact. So the opposite of NSYNC is async, but NSYNC really is real-time communication. Real-time communication is a regular conversation. I tell you something, you tell me something back. I give you an idea and you reply something hopefully related to the idea that I gave you. And some examples of that are our beloved Zoom calls, where everyone talks to everyone else at the same time, and they might interrupt each other, they might not hear each other. That's a great example of real-time communication. It's not always as messy. Sometimes real-time communication works. Sometimes you can have really good conversations, but in modern age, this is the typical meeting in
Actually, just before we started, I had a crazy dog barking just next to my window, and I was like, "How am I gonna do that show?" You know, he was barking there in the neighbor's garden. So yeah, I totally know what you're talking about.
Well, there you go. That thing gets picked up by mics, and people are gonna be, or babies crying, or whatever. The neighbor decides, when you have the most important meeting in your career, the neighbor decides it's time to hang that frame that he's been procrastinating for 6 months, and so he grabs the hammer and starts hammering on your wall. Those things happen, and it's not 100% bad. But there are better ways, and it definitely shouldn't be the only way we communicate. So more examples of real-time communication or NSYNC communication are, meetings, instant messaging, if you're replying at this in real time, phone calls, conversations, etc. Now, the opposite of NSYNC communication is async. I mentioned that, but is when you ask for something and you don't expect an answer right away. So is the communication in which there's a delay between one message and the next, and that delay is not necessarily explicit. So you're just providing hopefully a time frame for which when you require a response, and that's what we call async communication, sort of like in broader terms. The reason why async works so great with remote teams is because it's a lot more remote friendly, meaning you can work in different time zones without worrying of having to jump on a meeting at 2 a.m. because that's the best time for your boss. It also fosters documentation, because when you're doing async, most of the communication is in written form. So you take your time to craft a message that makes sense, that expresses your ideas. And because you already wrote it and put it into words, it gets stored in whatever digital tool we're using to send it. And it gets picked up by the tool's search functionality. It gets indexed and it creates magically documentation. Which also is great for people then to like get up to speed with whatever's happening with that project. It's also deep work compatible because it reduces the amount of interruptions, it reduces the amount of meetings, creating more space in your day to actually focus on doing something meaningful with your time. Questions? No? Otherwise, I'm gonna keep going.
I mean, do you agree with me that this is kind of like the next, like I see a lot of companies are already, struggling with getting remotes, but now after 1 year of pandemic, it looks like at least most of big companies have achieved that. But do you agree with me that this is kind of the next challenge that they are facing? Like when everyone is remote, it's like, okay, and then how do we work for real, like long term? And I was just wondering, what you think about. Are there any steps, or should you learn first to get remote? Should you do remote and async at the same time, or is it the next step?
First of all, I think remote is here to stay. I think remote was going to happen anyway. COVID only accelerated it. It's kind of like little bird, the mom of little bird pushed little bird out of the nest, and now we have to learn how to fly before we hit the ground. So that's what COVID was for remote. Companies are realizing that it doesn't make sense to spend enormous amounts of money on office space that most people are not going to use. Very senior and experienced consultants and professionals are going to be less inclined in the future to relocate or to move for a meeting, just travel around the country just to meet with their clients when they can just do everything with a Zoom call or working remotely. So remote is just the reality that we have to live with, whether you like it or not. We don't know. I mean, vaccines seem to be doing the trick, but we don't know how long we're going to still work in remote. And even after COVID is part of history, we're still not going to know if everyone is going to go back to the office the way it was. So it's not a matter of whether we get used to remote. It's a matter of how do we make it work. And I'm a firm believer that you have to learn how to play with these two types of communications, real-time communication and async communication. I would say most of your communication should be async so that you provide that time for your employees to actually do work that you're paying them to do. And just depending on the type of work and the type of industry, you can have 20-30% of your communication be real time. So I'm going to give you guys 3 strategies that I've came up with working remotely and leading remote teams that have worked really well in the past for me. And I want to share those with you. And I would love to hear also if you guys have other ideas or any comments on these strategies.
Cool.
So the first one is what I call batching. Actually, I didn't coin the term. The first time I read about the term of batching was reading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss many years ago. Yeah. And the concept is very simple. Instead of interrupting your work several times a day to check your email or to respond to messages, dedicate chunks of time to go through your entire communications. So instead of checking your email 5 times in the morning, check your email early in the morning or in the middle of the morning or right before you go to lunch, and take care of all of the communications, like get to inbox 0. For some people that might sound crazy, but it's actually possible. There are ways to do it. And the other part of the concept of batching is grouping together those periods of time that you would dedicate to work. If you reorganized your communication time, you should be able to lump together the time that you dedicate to work, which is going to help you to not be interrupted and having to cut whatever productive task you were doing. So this is a bad scenario. This is the typical scenario where you have meetings that are chopping your day into small pieces, sort of like what we saw on on the example from the sprint,
Yeah.
a good scenario or a good sort of solution for that first problem would be to lump together as many meetings as possible and reorganize them so that in the morning you have more time just for work and in the afternoon to communicate, or vice versa. Even though in this scenario you still have the same 2 hours of work, it's different because you have the 2 hours of work right after one after the other. Now, there's a lot of research that says that you need some time to get in sort of like into the flow of working. You need some time to get into focus mode. And depending on the task and depending on the person, that period can be anywhere between 10 minutes and 40 minutes. So if you only have one hour to work, and then you have to interrupt and resume work later, you're never going to have enough focus time to dedicate to that task, because you're going to have to do the focusing process is going to happen twice. So it's going to remove the amount of time, or it's going to diminish the amount of time you actually spend working.
Ed, I'm actually having a question about this one. Let's assume like the first column is like 2 meetings that you have during this day. Does it work with like 2 meetings that are not related at all? Like you just, like kind of chain them, or should it be like kind of like one meeting about one project?
So it's kind of hard to give like a one solution for all scenarios, because it depends a lot on the type of the meeting and the time zones and who's involved in the meeting. But the general rule is to group together meetings that have some form of overlap, whether in terms of the people participating or whether it is the topic. So it takes some work to sit down with your team and spend some time deciding which meetings can be either eliminated or merged with another, so that the end goal is really to reduce redundancy, to reduce the amount of meetings or the amount of time that you spend talking about the same thing over and over again, and also remove meetings that are like status check-ins. For example, a lot of people working in agile methodologies, they have their daily check-ins. This is something you can experiment with, but if you have all that information in your project management tool, in your Kanban board or whatever, you don't really need to get on a real-time call with your team to tell them what's already on the board. You're just reading the board. Doesn't make any sense.
So wait. So you're breaking the number one rule of kind of like agile. I think about Scrum, right? They have that ritual every day. It's kind of like the daily stand-up where you talk real time about what you have done yesterday, what you're gonna do today. So what you're telling is like maybe you should just put that like on the wiki or on Slack, and that's it.
Depending on your team, I'm not saying stop the status check-ins altogether. Still have the status check-ins, but see if you can do them in written form or recorded instead of getting everyone on the same phone call. Because what if you're running an agile methodology with people in Sydney, in Pakistan, and in the US? Someone is always going to have to work at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So that's not fair, and also it's not necessary. So that's just an example.
Yeah, you're right.
You have to do little tests and see what works for you. But I would start by recurring meetings. Recurring meetings are usually the sort of like the biggest offender. Recurring meetings take so much time out of your week. And a lot of times the recurring meetings happen just because they're in the calendar, because someone put them as a recurring meeting there ad infinitum to run on Google Calendar, and no one really bothers to check, do we really need this meeting? Or is there another way in which we can exchange or sort of communicate this information, whether that's a status check-in or whatever it is?
You know what? It just makes me think it would be so cool in the, I don't know, like Apple Calendar or Google Calendar. There will be a little vote like, is this meeting useful? And if, people, they just like, if they define that, no, it's not useful at all, maybe it just should be canceled, that would be so great, like, they just put you check.
Netflix, when you're not touching the remote, Netflix will ask, are you still watching?
Yeah.
Then Google Calendar is going to be like, do you still need this meeting? After a few occurrences. So yeah, definitely start with recurring meetings. I guarantee that you're going to find a few of them that shouldn't be happening or shouldn't be taking that long or shouldn't be involving that many people. The third sort of like step in this journey of batching would be figuring out which meetings are redundant or unnecessary and eliminate them altogether or replace them with async tools. So written form, emails, Slack, whatever you have, whatever you use, your project management tool, whatever it is that you use, see if you can put that information there so that you don't have to jump on a meeting to just read what's already online and everyone has access to. That should help you reduce the amount of meetings. And then the next step is to reclaim all that space that you gain from that exercise and dedicating that space to deep work. So now you have less meetings, you have more time to actually work. And if you can dedicate every single day or at least 4 times a week, 4 hours or 3 hours to a specific problem or a specific task, you're going to make so much more progress than if you only dedicate 1 hour a day or a couple of hours a day. This is just, I've done this in the past. I've seen the results, and it's really amazing the amount of time we waste just by not being organized with our calendars and the way we communicate with our teams.
Absolutely. If I can share about the design sprint, it's exactly why it was created. Like you have a big chunk of time only for that workshop, and you just focus, and that's how you get things achieved and things done.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole idea behind the sprint. Is like, all of these things that usually would take months to do because everyone is so busy doing meetings, let's just organize a way to work through this problem in a very short period of time where everyone is focused solely on this problem instead of meeting after meeting after meeting, trying to play around time zones, trying to play around with someone who's on leave. You know how it goes. So the ideal scenario is you have more time for interrupted work. You also have all of your meetings happening in the same uninterrupted chunk of time. And also you have more time to relax and to have lunch and have breaks. And then I've talked to some managers that say, but why would I pay my employees to have more time eating? It's like, that's not how the brain works. The brain has essentially 2 modes, the very focused mode and the not so focused mode. There's actual terminology for this. But basically, when you're solving a problem, your brain is working in the very focused mode, and it's in problem solving mode, and it's completely focused on trying to find patterns in whatever creative problem you're trying to solve. In order for you to sort of complete the cycle of working through a problem, you have to stop looking at the problem and walk and do something else that doesn't involve the problem. That's when your brain starts connecting in sort of like in the back end of your brain. The connections start happening and you start finding things that you didn't think about when you were actually super focused on the problem. I think the actual terms are alpha and beta mode, something like that. But if you want to learn more about this, I recommend the book by Daniel Kahneman, the Thinking Fast and Slow. It's really well explained, all of the exercises and experiments that they did with these 2 modes. So you need those 2 modes. That's why you have the aha moments when you're showering or taking a walk or walking your dog. It's because you're not thinking about the problem and your brain is working sort of like...
especially in the shower. I don't know why, but there is something linked to the shower. I see it's like you're on workshop. That's when the best ideas, they come under the shower.
Is the relaxation. Maybe there should be a showering time during the sprint.
Actually, I'm thinking about that.
We're able to take a break.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's batching. That's the first strategy. The second strategy is use contextual tools or contextual commenting. So a lot of modern tools use contextual comments. Contextual is when the communication happens right where it needs to happen. So I'll give you an example. You're working on an Excel spreadsheet and you don't understand a specific number. You drop a comment right on that number and say, hey guys, I don't understand where this number came from. And then the other person can respond, oh, well, this came because blah, blah, blah. Instead, the opposite would be I send an email saying, hey, guys, I don't understand the report. Someone replies, what part? Well, that part in the second page. Oh, you mean the third page? No, the second page. Oh, the second line? No, the third line. So very quickly, your communication gets in the way, or your style of communication gets in the way of actually addressing the problem. So with contextual commenting, you're addressing the problem right where it happens. And there's also a lot of research that shows that just the exercise of switching between your communication tool and the actual tool where you're doing the work, that puts a lot of cognitive load on your brain. It takes mental energy to switch from one app to the other, which, makes people go distracted. And again, they have less mental brain power to solve the problem that they're supposed to be solving. So for those tools that don't have contextual commenting, I would recommend, or for those of you working with very visual applications like editing audio or video or providing design feedback, I would recommend a couple of tools. One of them is CloudUp. CloudUp is very cool because you can quickly grab a screenshot and annotate it, like add text and highlight things. And as soon as you do that, it creates a link to that image or that screenshot, and it adds that link to your clipboard. So as you can see in the GIF here, you can just grab the screenshot, very quickly get the link, and then drop it. And that can be part of your documentation. You can put it on Slack. And the person receiving the link, they don't need to have a CloudUp account to actually see the content, which is very, very useful.
So it means the image is not in the email or on Slack. It's like a link you click and you can see the screenshot. Yeah,
exactly. It opens the link in a browser. And it works on mobile. I mean, any device that has a browser, and you don't need a CloudUp link. Cool. A CloudUp account.
Is it paid or not?
Is what?
Is it paid? Is it a paid app?
They have a free version.
So they have a free version, but
which means that they do have they have to make money. And the other app is Loom. It's a similar concept, sort of, but Loom is more focused on video. So Loom allows you to record your screen. And this is really great with async teams that are providing feedback in long form. Me as a manager, when I was working with different designers, I would just go over the design file and record myself pointing at the things that needed some form of change or edits. And then when they would wake up, if they were in a different time zone, maybe 8 hours apart or something, they will look at the recording and then understand exactly what I'm talking about, instead of me sending them an email with 12, 15, 20 points of feedback.
This is so cool. I would like to share a story about that because, it's a couple of weeks ago, now I have my streaming gear and I'm super proud of that. But anyway, a couple of weeks ago, I received a super long email from a client, and I was like, okay, I started to answer that super long email. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to record a video. And I just went in front of my camera, I pressed record, and I just said what I had to say. It took me, 5 minutes. I took the file, put it on YouTube, private YouTube, I sent the link. And for the client, it was magic. It was the best customer care, or, they thought I spent so much of time to answer them. And for me, it took no time because I just could record myself. And I think this is underused, actually. What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, and it's so easy to do.
Yeah.
Also. All right. So I would recommend using contextual tools. And when you don't have contextuality available to you, create it using tools like Loom and CloudUp and others that are similar.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I think that also what really helps also, and I tell my staff to do this, is that every time they finish something, to create a Loom that's no longer than, which just happens to be the free version as well, Steph, which is 5 minutes, but of what they did, because I think that when you're remote, you have less time, and also you need to be able to communicate in shorter amounts. And what I write in the email is I say, because 5 minutes is too long, I say, can you watch it at 2 times speed? this message will only take 2.5 minutes, like
Yeah,
that's
this
like,
is cool.
and then maybe you get more of a response, which is cool. So
Actually, it's a very good idea. And, like for all these daily stand-ups, they could be on Loom. That's true. They don't need to be in sync. Yeah.
all right, what do you want to yeah.
Yeah, it depends. That takes me to the third strategy, actually, that I recommend that most of your async communication takes written form for a few reasons. When it's written, it's indexable, meaning that you can organize it in a directory or in a database or in a spreadsheet or whatever you use. And that's going to help other people who don't have your brain to very quickly find what they're looking for. So if they have a sequence of files that follow a very logical pattern, anyone can find the file that they're looking for. So that's what I mean with indexable. And just to give you an example of how powerful it is, Google doesn't scan the entire internet every time you ask for something or when you Google something. What they do is that they create an index of all the pages that they have in their catalog. That's what SEO people and marketing people call get indexed by Google. That means your page and their subpages are added to the index. Google's computers can scan the entire index very quickly because it's just running through a piece of text, I imagine, or maybe it's a lot more complex than that, but something that a machine can do very fast. So indexing is that powerful because it allows you to search the entire internet in less than a second. So imagine what you can do when someone needs to find information to work with you in your company. So that's the first reason why I recommend trying to make an effort to make most of your async communication written. The second advantage of that is that it makes it searchable. So if you use a consistent naming convention, and I'm going to give you an example in a couple of minutes, when you use a logic to naming your files, anyone can sort of like understand that logic and can quickly search using key terms. So if you have something like training manuals 2021, training manuals 2020, anyone understands that if I'm looking for the training manuals of last year, I know exactly what to type. I just have to type training manuals and the year, and I'm gonna find the file. The opposite of that is naming my files training manuals final edited, training manuals final. This one is the right one. Yeah. Training manuals corrected by Steph, which happens a lot.
He learns the hard way.
Yes.
So it's silly, but it like once you have it down and you share the naming convention with your team, and everyone starts naming their files following the same convention, it's magical. It's like all of a sudden you have this amazing capacity to go into anyone's Dropbox or Google Drive folder and understand what's going on and find the files. And the third reason I recommend using written messages for your async communication, or most of it, is that people read faster than they listen. So I know it's very convenient to do the video, and sometimes I really recommend the video because we're very visual creatures, but for things that don't require that level of visual stimulus, it's better to have a written file. And also because not only is a lot faster to read it, but also the reasons that I just mentioned is indexable and it's searchable. So that's why I recommend. So a good mix would be maybe 80% in written form and 20% video. Now, again, it will depend a lot on the type of work that you do, the type of feedback that you provide your team, the type of the type of files that you usually work with. But usually try to do text. Also, think about this. If you have a series of Zoom calls and each meeting is 2 hours and you say, okay, I'm recording the meetings for, Steph wasn't here last week because he was traveling. So Steph can watch those 10 hours of Zoom calls and get up to speed. Now imagine, you basically spend another week watching videos, even if you play it at 2x.
Yeah.
Who wants to sit through, like, I mean, a 2-hour
right.
recording at 2x is still 1 hour. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right. And, I got some requests a couple of months ago from potential clients who were like, we would like to run the design sprint because we want to rethink our intranet. And I was like, okay, great. And then I was like, just in the answer, I was like, did you try this tool and Dropbox? And I just sent a couple of Notion. I guess you're going to show that and a couple of tools and Slack. And they were like, oh my God, this is crazy. It blows my mind. And, really, my advice to you is like, in your company, spend some time just looking at what exists already, because there are so many great tools that appeared a couple of years ago, a month ago, that maybe you're not aware of, and they can help you like crazy. And just ditch your old intranet and replace it with these tools because it's just better.
And also, there's tools like that are now with video, everything gets transcribed. And so they are searchable. And also they're starting to work on a lot of tools that I've been using and designing myself that will actually, I don't know, it doesn't work well, I have to admit, but like we'll create, how you said 20 hours of Zoom calls or whatever, but like they'll create an automatic summary of that thing. You know what I mean? So like, it's around the corner. It's not going to work well. So you're right. For the next year or two, you're right, but like it's gonna
We're getting there.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. You touched on a point that's very important. Tools are getting smarter. So, there's tools like, I just started using a tool called Descript. For editing podcast.
Yeah,
is amazing. That technology is fantastic. I see the future of async communication be 100% like Descript.
So I agree with you. I think it's amazing, but when I tried it, it has the technology to remove all the filler words like like what I say a lot when I speak. But for real, when you remove all of that, and I tried to generate a video, you sound like a cyborg, you don't sound like a human. So it's still not there, It's like, what can we remove as filler words, but not sounding like a machine? And the flow was weird and too fast. So yeah, it's not there yet, but I agree with you. The technology is like, it's descript.com, the tool.
Yeah, it's getting better by the day. To me, my favorite part is not actually to listen to things, edited things, but to getting the transcript and then being able to edit the video using the transcript. For me, that's the most powerful thing, because if you had a call, you run it through transcript, you have the transcript of the call, you know exactly what are the main topics. If you had an agenda and you prepare for the call and the call is organized and it's not like everyone is improvising, you can very quickly create a summary or have an assistant create a summary for you. And then you post that summary with whoever needs to be aware of what happened in that call. And not only for those people who were on leave, but also think about people that you're going to hire in the future, that they need to quickly get up to speed to the way you do things in your company. Imagine that your company is going to keep growing and you're going to be more people, and you're not always going to have the time to train them and explain them everything. At some point, you're going to have a process that they can go through on their own.
So true. Actually, about our own company, Design Sprint Ltd, we are mostly French speakers. We have some people who are also English speakers, but we took the decision to everything on the Notion, for example, is in English, because it's going to allow us to hopefully scale in the future or integrate some people who are not French speakers. And when you create your wiki or whatever it's called, think about, not now, but the coming years. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, make it future-proof.
Future-proof, love it.
So one of the most powerful things about async and applying these strategies that we just reviewed is, let's say, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say John is in Australia and John needs to help to finish his research report. So he creates a message to his team saying, hey guys, I need to present this report and this is the information that I need. John goes to sleep, and then Sam, who has a little bit of overlap because he's in Pacific time, and Australia have a little bit of overlap. Sam starts to upload the transcripts and pays attention to what John said and sends a message to Laura. So a few hours later, Laura, who's in Madrid, European time zone, wakes up and she can start working on that report, editing the transcripts, working together with Leah, who's in a different city, but in the same time zone. They do the work and then they upload everything with instructions to Kate, who's in New York. They have a little bit of overlap. They work together and then Kate posts the work again in whatever system they're using to communicate. And then John wakes up and in less than 24 hours, John was able to work with his entire team to create the report. The opposite of that, and not everyone, some of you guys will feel familiar with the situation. John says, you guys, we need to have a meeting to talk about the report. Okay, how about Thursday? Thursday, I can't. How about Friday? Friday at 6 a.m. Oh, that's 3 a.m. for me. I can't do it. So you already have a couple of days just trying to figure out when the meeting's going to happen. The meeting happens. It's not planned, doesn't have an agenda, doesn't have a clear outcome. So you spend 2 hours. You record the meeting for no reason because no one's going to watch it, but you still record it. And nothing comes out of that meeting other than you need the transcripts to be edited. So eventually, John sends an email to Laura and to Leah to work on the transcripts. And the thing keeps getting delayed. And it's not because you're doing the work. It gets delayed because the way you're communicating. So this is a very good example. I love this example of the importance of under communicating versus over communicating and understanding the sort of like the power that over communication can have when you're working remotely. So under communication is the typical email or the typical message. Can you please provide me with reporting on content once you get a chance? And then someone's going to reply, okay, great. Where do I find the information? You can find it on Google Analytics. Okay, great. What do you need? I don't know. What do you suggest? Oh, maybe bounce rate. Okay. And then emails keep piling up. You cannot reply in real time because you have other stuff to do, like being on a meeting, running your company, having a life. So you can spend 2 weeks trying to finally get to this point in which you create the report. The opposite of that would be from the beginning, the first message that you create is, hey, Mr. So-and-so, could you please provide me with a short report about 1 page on our blog metrics with data that you can find in Google Analytics. I need it for next Tuesday before 2 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure to include top blog posts, unique page views, bounce rates, so on and so forth. And you can find an example of a similar report on this link. So I'm giving you what I need, when I need it, how to put it together, what to include, and how long it should be. Everything in one message. It's so much better.
Yeah.
It avoids so much back and forth. And it's also not only better for me as a manager because I don't have to be responding to your questions, but it's also better for you because you don't have to be bugging me and just sitting 2 hours on your chair doing nothing, waiting for me to finish a meeting to get back to you. So this is the difference. And this is how important it is to over communicate. I pulled this from a blog post from this company that I really like. It's called Doist. They do my favorite to-do app called Todoist. And I dropped the link here. It's really worth to read the entire post.
Actually, this leads me to a question. Do you know some companies that are masterizing async collaboration? Because when you think, you can probably save a lot of money applying these techniques. So do you know one that is worldwide and working fully async? Yeah,
there's a few that are really, really good. There's GitLab. They do some software for DevOps. There's Buffer that provides social media management tools. There's Doist, which are the guys who wrote this blog post, who do Todoist, but they also create some other tools for async communication. And there's probably a few more. I know InVision is 100% distributed from the beginning. There's quite a lot of companies.
So basically, your advice is to look for companies that were already distributed, like you can think maybe Automatic as well, like WordPress. So looking at these guys and basically stealing from them, rather than companies like Spotify that decided kind of, like a couple of weeks ago to get fully remote. So you would kind of go to the old ones in a way.
I would start with the ones that have been doing it from the beginning intentionally, and not the ones that began doing it because of COVID. So I'm pretty sure Spotify is doing things right because they're Spotify. They cannot afford not doing it, but they just assume 100% remote because of COVID. Whereas you have Buffer and GitLab that have been remote for over 6-8 years. So I would start with those companies first. And then I'm sure, some companies publish blog posts more often than others. So just check on the blogs of these companies and see what you can learn. I would definitely recommend starting with Doest. Their blog is amazing. But I'm also aware of the work that Buffer does, and their content is also really good to get up to speed in terms of what they can do. Not only they're great at async communication, but they also have this example setting policy of being super transparent. So you can find their entire policy for compensation online, and they have actually a tool to calculate compensation, which is very, very interesting, and it's a huge inspiration for companies in the future, like how to be completely open and like forget about this sort of like taboo of like employees are not supposed to talk to each other to ask what they're making. So yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Orit on the chat is mentioning Basecamp. You want to talk about Basecamp, Orit?
Basecamp is great, and it's one of the first ones that started doing. Actually, they designed Basecamp around async communication. What's that?
I said from Chicago.
From Chicago.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
When there were 37 signals, but I think they were always remote, but they always had an office, and that's my next question. Because now we're just talking, we just signed for 3 more years, but I think we're crazy. But like, what about the office? You know what I mean? Like, because they have an office and and InVision has offices everywhere. And what's the role of the office? And like, why? And also like, I'm just like, shouldn't it go down in price? Like, I was just asking, I was like, go check, because it's crazy. It can't be like, it doesn't make sense, So any thoughts about that? Like, what's going on with the office?
Yeah. So the office is still required, in my opinion. Here's the thing. We're talking today about async, but I don't think async replaces 100% communication in the workplace. I think it's something that we need to incorporate in our day-to-day way of communicating, but it's not the cure for everything. There's so many other things that we can learn in order to be more efficient, like things like the design sprint, or so many workshop methodologies to organize the way you collaborate with people. But for me, the role of the office is one of the downsides of working 100% remote, and I can tell you this because I've been doing it for a while, is you get very isolated. It's very lonely, especially if you don't have a family, or if you live by yourself, or it's locked down and you're by your own. So I think the office is still a great space to create that human connection, to meet people in person. We're social creatures. Like, we're doing remote because technology allows us to, but we're still social creatures, and we need to talk to other people and express ideas, and most of our communication is non-verbal. So there's sort of like that part gets lost when we're doing video conferencing. So offices are still important, but are not the only way in which we can work. And that brings me to another topic, that while we're remote and we cannot go to the office, I recommend companies to set informal meetings for people to hang out online. So something like a remote coffee, or a remote beer.
A remote apéro with wine. Look at that.
Or an apéro with wine and cheese. These things are super, super important, because not everything in our lives can be about work. And the sort of like unintended positive effect of that is that we connect more and we bond with the people that we work with, which leads us to work better. If we like the people that we're working with, we're gonna talk to each other better. It's gonna be a more seamless experience of collaboration. So again, just to round up that point is I don't think async should be an 100% replacing real-time communication or in-person meetings, but I think it's another tool to apply to our repertoire of communication techniques.
But like I was in the office today after a long time that I wasn't, and I walked in and I looked at it and I was thinking, how is hybrid or remote work gonna affect the interior design of offices?
Yeah.
Suddenly I'm going in there and suddenly I'm looking and I'm seeing this open space and it's not working. Like something about like I don't know. It's like me and my business partner were looking at the space, and we're just like, it's just weird. It just doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? Like something like how it should be different, because of this remote, because of do you know anyone who's doing anything with that? Like with
I know the example, but maybe you're not going to like it. WeWork, before the 300 scandals that they went through plus COVID, they had this initiative that I thought was amazing, which was, I think it was called the WeWork Experience or something like that, in which consultants from WeWork will go and help you design your office to encourage a more open collaboration style of communicating. So the problem with the traditional cubicle-based office is that it's designed for the industrial area in which everyone has a station and it's like a chain of production. And whatever offices we have today, even open spaces, are an evolution of that. What WeWork did is they started more sort of like with the open space idea and took it one step further to make it a combination between privacy and shared spaces. Honestly, when you go to WeWork, it looks more like a hotel or a hostel than, a very fancy one for that matter, but still looks like looks like taken out of a hospitality industry and not from the, the business workspaces industry, if that's even an industry, I don't know. But yeah, to your point, I think more and more companies will I actually have a friend that works doing this, will start providing services or interior design services to boost productivity in open spaces. And that's actually something that people are already working on, in which they'll come to your office before you open or when your office is not being used. And then they'll study the way your teams work together and organize each other. And they'll design around boosting productivity and maximizing productivity for that particular situation that you're in.
I think, Benjamin, you want to share about Steelcase?
Yes, sorry, I just wrote in the chat. Yes, so sorry, hi everyone. Quickly, I'm working with a client which is Pôle Emploi. Maybe in France, it's anyway, public company, and they want to go hybrid work. So I'm helping them with this, and we are sometimes working with Steelcase, if it's the furniture. And on their website, I think they have a lot of documentation now about how you can make hybrid settings. So if Chris do from the future, playing with screens, camera, and whatever, to be here and not here, and that kind of stuff, or the node chair, and you can have like more space between people and you can rearrange. So just wanted to say this.
That's super cool. Yeah, I think you're going to have to create stations, like you said, like streaming stations. You know how they have like the call booths in some co-working spaces and in WeWork? I think you're going to have to create sort of like streaming stations in which I go in there to just talk to people around the world. And I have the camera and I have the screen and I have my laptop here. I think it's going to be very interesting what's going to happen with the office. I have, there's so much to be done in that space.
I know that here in Tel Aviv, or where I am, like that before COVID, Microsoft decided to redo their entire offices so that it's more. I didn't see how they're doing it, but they're making it more like meeting places, like cafes and like whatever, and more. It's interesting. It's like the idea is, but like you said, a lot of people. I personally like working at home. But like it's true, a lot of younger people actually, they're like, we want to see people. And I'm just like, why? Yeah. But like they really do want to, I'm kidding.
Ed,
they really do want to see people. They want to see like, it's true. So
yeah. Ed, do you agree with me that in the future it's gonna be either async work for all the routine stuff, and it's gonna be some very important moment like maybe design sprints, but like workshops or meetings about deciding on the very important things? What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be a combination of that. And I think there's still going to be a little bit of space for regular meetings. I don't think they're going away. I think they can be useful sometimes. But yeah, to your point, I think it's going to be mostly async for things that we don't really need a meeting for. Mm-hmm. And that definition can change depending on your company. And a little bit of workshops, because workshops are fantastic for aligning people, grabbing the input of a lot of different people and aligning towards something. I think that's, for me, the number one thing that workshops do. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to have independent work or sort of like individual execution, for which async is going to be the rule. And then sometimes you're going to have regular meetings for presentations, for example. I think presentations should still happen in real time, like what we're doing right now. This is a very good example of how I envision presentations being part of an async and a workshop sort of strategies. Yeah,
actually, I would like to ask the audience who is here, why are you coming live? You know that I'm recording the video and you could totally watch the video after. Why are you live with us? Like, what are you getting from this? Please answer.
I think we do, but I do both, so like if I can't make it, then I'll watch it after. And if I can make it, because there's so much content.
Yeah. So there's Andrea. She just said, "I'm just trying to win some wine." This is so honest.
That's brutal. A valid reason.
Yeah.
But it's like if then you can miss it because you may not go back to it. And if it's an important enough subject, and I've been looking forward to this one ever since I saw Steph, you posted it, because it's been on my brain for so long. Like, what am I going to do with this space?
Yeah.
So if it's important, you want to be there live, and if it's less important, you want to see I don't know, maybe
and watch it at 2x.
Yeah, I watch it too.
Well, I think honestly, it's all about interaction. There are people who come for the content, so they can watch it, and you can open YouTube and you can find the content you're looking for, and you can watch it when you have time. But I guess these kind of events, it's all about interaction, and you can say what interests you specifically, and you can deep dive more into the specific things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys, I have one more slide.
One more. It's like 10 minutes. We are stuck on the same slide.
Yeah, the conversation got interesting.
Yeah,
I added this one, Steph, last minute, because I thought it would be very interesting to share sort of like the naming conventions that I created in my previous companies.
That's cool.
So this is sort of like a very general formula, and it's meant for you to adapt it to your particular scenario, but go from general to specific and then add an ordinal sequence. And by ordinal sequence, that could be a date, that could be, just a number or whatever, you think is more adequate. So I'll give you an example. A very simple one could be what this thing is. So let's say a competitive analysis dash, and then a specific modifier would be marketing team. Maybe you have competitive analysis carried out by a different team or for a specific client. So those are specific modifiers of a thing that's standard or general. And then the third step, or the sort of like the third component of the taxonomy, is an ordinal sequence. So adding the date, or for example, if you're working in quarters, it could be quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, the specific date or a relative date, something like March 2021. So using this combination, we were able to standardize in my previous company the way we store files, and it achieves that thing that we saw a few minutes ago of like very quickly being able to index and very quickly being able to search through enormous amounts of files, regardless of their format. I am aware that some of these tools like Notion and Airtable are not something that you can download. They're meant to be in the cloud, so it's not like you can download and put it in a Google Drive or a Dropbox folder. But the reason I included these examples here is because following the same naming convention, regardless of where you are, helps your team find what they're looking for regardless of where they're looking for it. So if you have someone that usually doesn't mess with Airtable because they're in a specific area in your team that doesn't have to do anything with Airtable, and there's a specific situation in which you need them to pull a file from Airtable, they're going to find their way because the naming convention is going to be familiar for them. So it doesn't matter what the platform, if the names are consistent and follow a logic. This is not something that you can just come up with and throw it on a Slack shared channel and then hope everyone is going to adopt it. This is something that you have to consistently remind people and call them up on it if they don't use it, and train them and make it part of your onboarding process until it becomes second nature. At some point, you reach a point in which you're thinking about naming a file and you do it automatically because you have a standard for it. So it's easier for you to come up with a name that follows that standard than coming up with a name that doesn't make sense, like, competitive analysis number 2, edited, final version.
Yeah. This is so great. And really, if you don't know Airtable or Notion, please check these tools. They are just amazing. I'm running design sprints and I go to companies for like 1 week, and I see that more and more of companies are using these tools, especially Notion, and really check it out if you haven't done it yet. It's really great actually. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm happy to share the presentation, or if you guys couldn't take a screenshot of that.
Thank you so much, Ed. Hey, everyone, I would like you to give a big round of applause, please, for Mr. Ed Orozco. Woo! Yes. Thank you so much, Ed. It was really great, super insightful, and really actionable, and that's what we like at iToday Apero. So if you feel like you are the next speaker, please reach out to us. Thank you so much, Ed, for coming, for sharing all your knowledge. Ed, where can we find you online?
I think the easiest way is to just go on my website. You can find all my contact information there. It's at orozco.com. I host a podcast, and Steph was part of one of the episodes.
Thank you.
It's called the Growing Design Podcast, and you can also search for Growing Design. I upload the video recordings that you can watch at 2x by searching Growing Design on YouTube.
This is amazing. So thank you so much for coming. We're gonna stop the recording here, but you can stay, and we're gonna open the rooms for networking and drinking wine. Thank you so much for being part of iToday Apero number 4, and see you very soon. Cheers.